What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another edition of Giants Collective. As always, I am joined by Adriana, Anthony, and Chris, the entertainer talking sports. Happy hump day, everybody out there. Gonna be right up front with you guys and girls. Not a whole lot to talk about. We're gonna discuss the quarterback situation, obviously, here with the New York Giants. But if you have any questions, please throw them in the chat. Also know that the Fridays edition is usually going to be something like a mailbag. And I know I discussed this at the end of the stream last Wednesday. But if you have any questions for Friday's show, just make sure you drop them in the comment section of this video. We'll take the 3 or 4 best questions and we'll answer them on Friday night. So hopefully you guys had a great couple of days. It's been Friday. You know, this Friday is the spring equinox. It is the official beginning of spring. And the New York Giants still don't have a damn quarterback at all. We don't know who it is. We know Tommy DeVito's here. And that's about it. I'm going to get a big slice of lasagna, a couple of cannolis, and I don't know what to say. Adriana, we always start with you. What is going on with the Giants quarterback situation? Are we going to have anybody at this point? And who do you think it might be now that the Vikings are out and Aaron Rodgers? Does it make it more likely we're going to get him? Because I know you love Aaron Rodgers, so
I'm just dying to get my tickets for the season opener to see 42-year-old at that point, Aaron Rodgers. Cannot wait.
Well, younger than I am, so I can't say anything.
To me, the Vikings were never in the equation anyway, so I was not surprised by this news because I feel like there was not a single credible piece of information that said that the Vikings were actually in play. So I'm more surprised that they said that they have gotten a ton of calls about trading for JJ McCarthy. So I am getting a little bit nervous that the Giants are just letting Aaron Rodgers do whatever he wants and takes his sweet ass time to decide between the Steelers and the Giants. And like, he's going to end up going to the Steelers. My worry is he goes to the Steelers. The Vikings have said that they also want to bring in a veteran quarterback. So let's say they bring in Joe Flacco or Jameis Winston, and then the Steelers sign Russ Wilson. Carson Wentz, baby. Season opener 2025. No, I will jump off a bridge. I don't actually think that Carson Wentz would be an option. I hope not, but I'm worried that because they're giving Aaron just so much time to figure it out, that by the time he decides he's not going to play for the Giants, which is what I think is going to happen, we're not really going to have that many options, assuming, you know, I don't know, all those players go to other teams. I think at this point, it's probably going to be Russ Wilson, who is the quarterback of 2025, and then some sort of rookie will be his backup. That's what I'm feeling right now. I don't think Rodgers is picking the Giants, and I don't think Russ is going to pick Cleveland. And from everything that I have seen and heard, it sounds like Russell is the second choice behind Rodgers.
Anthony, what do you think Aaron Rodgers is waiting for exactly? Like, what is taking him so damn long? It's not like there's 8 or 9 teams interested in this guy. It sounds like there's only 2. What the hell is taking him so long? Why is he dragging this out?
I think he's waiting for the Vikings to change their mind. I don't think they will change their minds, but I think that's what he's waiting for. I read today that apparently when Brett Favre made that switch from the Jets to the Vikings, it didn't happen until August. He stretched it out that long. Okay. If Aaron Rodgers stretches this thing out to August, I think Giants fans are collectively going to have one giant conniption. So I really hope that's not the case, but I think that's what he's waiting for. I think he's trying to decide, you know, if he actually wants to run it back with a Giants team coming off of a 3-14 season, or a Steelers team with Arthur Smith as his offensive coordinator, or would he rather just retire? Obviously, going to the Vikings is different, though. That's a team that's built to honestly compete deep into the playoffs with the roster that they have. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, they're great on the defensive side of the ball as well. So I think that's truly all that he's waiting for. I don't think it has anything to do with money. The Giants seem like a team to me right now that's desperate enough to just pay him whatever he wants. So I really can't imagine it's a money thing. I think he's simply just waiting to see if the Vikings will allow him to play for them. And ultimately, I think they're going to tell him no. And so I think the Giants are going to have to pivot in a new direction, which I hope they do regardless, because I think that just signing Russell Wilson, calling it a day, and getting this over with is the easiest and the best course of action here.
I agree. Chris, do you have any opinion on why Aaron Rodgers is taking so damn long? Now, I did read also that it did say Aaron Rodgers may wait till after the draft. which doesn't do the Giants any favors, obviously. But I don't know. I mean, do you think he's the Giants' number one choice? And should they just pivot off of him? Because the Giants can't afford to play these games right now.
Well, like Adriana said, like the Minnesota thing never made sense to me. For Rodgers, it made sense, but it didn't make sense for Minnesota to want Rodgers because all the signs pointed to the fact that they weren't looking for a veteran quarterback. They let Sam Darnold walk. That would have made more sense if you were going the veteran route. He was accustomed to the offense. He had played in the scheme last year. He had shown a lot of progress. So as soon as they let him walk, I never thought Minnesota was going to be involved. I thought that Rodgers wants Minnesota. I still think Rodgers wants Minnesota because it makes all the sense in the world for him. He's an aging quarterback. He gets to play in a dome. It's the Packers' biggest rival. They've got all the weapons in the world. It gives him a chance to compete for a Super Bowl late into his career. But from the Vikings standpoint, they invested a top 10 pick in a quarterback, and it's year 2, and they want to see if he can grow. So it doesn't make any sense. I never thought Minnesota was going to get involved in the Rodgers thing. Why is Aaron Rodgers waiting? I mean, Anthony's probably right. Maybe he's hoping and praying that maybe they feel McCarthy, as the offseason prolongs, isn't fully recovered from that injury. And they say, hey, maybe now we're willing to take that swing for Aaron Rodgers. That's a possibility. Or maybe he's just waiting for how things develop throughout the league. And at this point, he may be waiting for after the draft because he may say, well, I will reassess at that point. I'll see if the Giants draft Shedeur Sanders. I'll see what the Pittsburgh Steelers do at the quarterback position, and then I'll pick the team that I feel is best for me. But in the end, if it's between the Giants or the Steelers, I'd be stunned. I'd be stunned if he doesn't pick the Steelers for all the reasons that we've talked about over the last couple of weeks. They have a better supporting cast. They have 2 elite wide receivers now, with Metcalf and Pickens. They're a team that constantly competes. They got a proven head coach, and it gives them a chance to compete for a Super Bowl. So I agree. I think I'm leaning it'll be Russ. The only way at this point, because I think Russ is waiting for Rodgers, because I think in a perfect world for Russ, he'd like to go back to Pittsburgh. An offense he played in last year gives him a chance to compete, but he knows that Pittsburgh is courting Rodgers. So I think he's waiting for Rodgers' decision. And then if Rodgers elects to not go to Pittsburgh, he'll probably end up back there. If he goes to Pittsburgh, it's obviously between the Giants or the Browns, or at least it seems that way. And the only way I could see him picking the Browns over the Giants would be if the Browns told Wilson, we're not drafting a quarterback, and you're going to get to be the starter all year, and the Giants give him the opposite message. But if all things are equal, I have to think he ends up a New York Giant. They're just a better spot than the Cleveland Browns.
You know, it's funny to me because, like I said, I don't know. Aaron Rodgers acting like there's a bunch of teams interested in him, and I really don't know what the hell he's waiting for. If he doesn't want to choose the Giants, why doesn't he just choose the Steelers? I also wonder, the quarterback carousel is always funny. I wonder if Minnesota would be interested in Russell Wilson if they get involved in one of these quarterbacks as well. Minnesota's an interesting prospect simply because McCarthy is coming off a torn ACL. He's never taken a snap in the NFL, and they don't really have anybody else either now. They let Darnold walk. So they're also in a really interesting position, kind of like we would be if we go into the season. We don't have a number one quarterback outside of DeVito, and we're going in with Shedeur Sanders or Cameron Ward. It's kind of the same thing as Minnesota technically has a rookie quarterback. We don't know what the hell J.J. McCarthy is, and he's coming off an injury, although they're obviously set up a lot better than our franchises to do anything. So the Giants don't really look like, it's not really a great situation to go into. It'd be a hard sell for sure because, again, you look at the other teams that they're set up better, but you would hope that, somebody wants to come here and change a franchise. You would hope that somebody wants to come in here and turn it around. And maybe the draw for Aaron Rodgers is, the Jets didn't work out. Maybe he could go the other, into the other locker room and turn the Giants around, and that would piss the Jets. I don't know. I don't know what the hell he's waiting for. I don't know what the hell anybody's waiting for. I don't know what the hell we're waiting for. I just know I'm getting aggravated, and I'm sick and tired of this, and I just want it to be over. That's all I know. Anthony, we talked about this right before the show started. Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, Joe Flacco. You can name a bunch of veteran quarterbacks. Does it make the Giants a competitive team if they do get a guy like Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson, a proven veteran, a guy that is going to Canton, although his best days are behind him, but obviously better than any quarterback we've had here in the last 6 years, a guy that can change blocking schemes, that can see a blitz, that can get rid of the ball, that can anticipate wide receivers, things we didn't see Daniel Jones do for the last 6 years. Can it make the Giants a competitive team with that position alone by adding somebody like Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson?
I think it depends on how you define the term competitive. For me, competitive would be one of those teams. I think the baseline for competitive is a team that's on the fringe of the playoffs, meaning like the Falcons didn't make the playoffs this year, but they had a chance of making the playoffs at the end of the season. Like they were playing competitive, meaningful football in December. So that to me is competitive. Now, others might not feel the same way. Maybe you have to be a playoff team to be competitive in some people's definition. But for me, a team like the Falcons, where had they just won a couple games versus the Bucs and the Bucs lost those games, they would have flip-flopped their playoff positioning. That's competitive to me. So that was only a 7-8 win team. If the Giants are looking at trying to be a 7-8 win team, be competitive in that regard, yeah, I do think a quarterback actually could probably get them there, because I think when you look at the last two seasons, I made this case last week when we were discussing 2023. They had those 3 games that were really decided by 3 plays, and a better quarterback converts those 3 plays. That makes them a 9-win team, and that's a playoff team. And then if you look at last season, they did have 8 games decided by 1 possession or less. If you have competent quarterback play in those 8 games, I have to imagine they probably pick up 4 of those wins. And then they're a 7-win team, and therefore probably playing meaningful football in December, therefore competitive. So, yeah, depending on what your definition of competitive is, I mean, listen, the Giants had barely 3,500 passing yards last year across 4 quarterbacks with a 15-13 touchdown interception ratio. If you took Aaron Rodgers' 3,800 yards with a 28-11 TD to INT ratio and dropped it on this team, all things constant, they probably do win an extra 4 to 5 games. They probably are that much better of a football team. That's how bad the quarterback play was here for the New York Giants last year. And even though that was the worst of Aaron Rodgers, it was still an astronomical night and day difference comparing the quarterback play between the Giants and the Jets. So, yeah, honestly, the more that I've thought about it, and I think this is why I'm starting to understand the way that Joe Schoen has moved this offseason, not necessarily that I support all these decisions that he's making in terms of the way he's treating the quarterback position. But when we talk about the Matthew Stafford thing, for example, and we were all saying, and I was even saying that the Giants weren't a Matthew Stafford away from being competitive. Well, actually, if you look at the word competitive and you try and define it the way that I just did, Matthew Stafford probably does make them competitive by that standard. And you could argue that Aaron Rodgers could have a similar effect and make them competitive by that standard.
Chris, if the Giants pick up Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers, should Giants fans be excited for the reasons Anthony just mentioned and the fact that Joe Schoen did a better job in free agency, so you're going to have better players on your roster going into 2025, and you also have a draft with 9 draft picks, and who knows if he's going to trade up and get some impact players, because we have, 5 top 100 picks? Is that right?
5,
or is it
5 picks inside the top
5? So you can definitely get some impact players there. We need impact players. Joe Schoen needs impact players. Does it give the reasons Giants fans to be hopeful if they do bring in a Russell Wilson or an Aaron Rodgers to say, hey, this team can win games, even though the schedule's hell? I know the schedule's hell. But does it give Giants fans some kind of hope to say, listen, we got a rookie waiting in the wings, we got a veteran quarterback here, we can win some games now and be competitive?
No. I'm being honest with you. Like bringing in Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson doesn't excite me. What Anthony just described to me, everybody's definition of competitive, I guess, is going to be different. What Anthony just described to me is hell in the NFL. I don't want to be a team that's in the middle, 6, 7, 8 wins. That's not where I want to be. Now, what will excite me is if you couple a Russell Wilson with a Shedeur Sanders or a Cam Ward. That's a different scenario. But if it's just Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson and a day 2 or 3 quarterback, I'm not excited.
No,
at all.
I meant with the rookie quarterback.
Oh yeah, well, if it's a top 3 pick at the quarterback position, I'm not talking about Jackson Dart or Jalen Milroe in the second round.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about
Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders with an Aaron Rodgers. Then yeah, I think it serves a purpose to bring in a Russell Wilson or an Aaron Rodgers for this football team, because it gives you that opportunity not to have to throw the rookie quarterback into the fire. He could sit, he could learn. And it probably more than likely guarantees Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll another year if the rookie quarterback looks competent the last 3 or 4 weeks when he gets an opportunity to see the field. So that's where I think it serves a purpose. Now, if you get Rodgers and Russell Wilson, don't take a quarterback with the top 3 pick, I'm not excited at all. I think that's exactly where I don't want to be, because then you're probably going to be picking 10, 11, 12 next year without a quarterback of the future. So it kind of works against you at that point. So it would depend on what they did in the draft.
Well, can I quickly counter and say so I know you and I have both disagreed on this before, Chris, but I gotta say I just think that being in the middle in the NFL is a fine place to be. I think it's so much better than being where the Giants are now, because when you look at the teams at the top, they all were in the middle. Like the Eagles were in the middle forever, the Chiefs were in the middle forever, the Bills were in the middle forever, and now they're all competing at the top of the NFL. Yes, the Commanders went from the bottom to the top, and so did the Bengals, but that is rare and often fades out pretty quickly, like it did with the Bengals, the Texans as well. But the Chargers have been in the middle for a very long time, and now they're competitive.
They were in the middle when they got Herbert, though, Anthony. They were 5th when they got Herbert.
Okay, sure. But they've been in the middle the last couple of years and a coaching change, or you can get in the middle and get a quarterback change. I think being in the middle is a much better place to be than where the Giants are, because as we've seen, picking in the top 5 doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a quarterback, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get a good quarterback either, and you might just stay at the bottom of the NFL. Building a competent roster like the Chiefs did when they got Alex Smith. They were in the middle. Then they traded up to draft Mahomes. The Bills had Tyrod Taylor, traded up to get Josh Allen. I know I've made this point before, and I don't want to repeat myself, but I just think the only way you get into the middle and you're stuck in hell is if you do what the Saints have done and you absolutely demolish your salary cap. But if the Giants, they are very salary cap healthy, and they have a position here where they can build a team, position it so that maybe in 26, if this is the route that they want to go, Travis Hunter 3 plus Aaron Rodgers, as their quarterback this year, they would have all of the cap space and flexibility to then sell the farm and then get that quarterback next year. And obviously it takes 2 to tango. You need a trade partner. All those things are true, and I understand that. But that's what all these other teams in the NFL have gone from the middle and traded up, gotten that quarterback. So I just want to throw that out there and just say that's my rebuttal against it and my disagreement there.
That's a fair point, Anthony. And I'm by no means am I trying to say that I don't want this team to be in the middle by year's end. I want them to improve the entire roster, but me personally, I don't get excited about if we get a Russell Wilson or an Aaron Rodgers, and without them, we have a 4 or 5 win roster with an improving overall roster if you draft properly. Over getting an Aaron Rodgers who's not going to be here past next year, or Russell Wilson who's probably not going to be here past next year, and they get us an extra 2 or 3 wins and we get to 7 or 8. That's just my outlook. Like, if you're going to go that route, I want a guy that is you already have on the roster set to replace them long term.
That's fair. Fair enough.
Adriana, I'll ask you. I'm not going to say Aaron Rodgers because I know how you feel about him. But if the Giants signed Russell Wilson, and they drafted Cameron Ward or Shedeur Sanders, would it give you hope going into 2025 that the team could be very competitive and get some wins under their belt, get that culture back, and then give a rookie quarterback confidence going forward? Do you think it'd be a really good move? Would you be excited to have a situation like that with the Giants?
Yeah, I'd say I'd feel like they would be competitive, not contenders. And I think that has to be the biggest distinction for people, is that the Giants we watched last year were not remotely competitive. But if they're to the point where they have a quarterback who is elevating this team to the point where they can score more than 1 touchdown a game, and maybe then they can actually help out the defense who, kept them in games early on, and they just, the offense couldn't do anything about it. I think that'll I think that would make the biggest.
I don't like Aaron Rodgers either.
It's so funny. Every time I do a video on like the quarterbacks or something, we're like playing and she's growling in the background, and everyone's like, wow, your dog really hates the quarterback situation.
Everybody does. Even the dogs know.
It's okay, Mars. So I think the biggest thing as to why that would excite fans is the fact that our quarterback room has been so miserable for the last couple of years. And like, at least we had Tyrod. If Daniel Jones went down, you feel like, okay, Tyrod can run the offense. Like, he's going to throw the ball down the field, etc. Last year, when we're talking about benching Daniel Jones, 5 weeks into the season, no one felt any better about putting Drew Lock in there or Tommy DeVito. Yeah. So now it's like, all right, if Russell Wilson has a tough couple games and he looks bad and misses throws or whatever, at least you feel like, all right, well, if we throw the rookie in, he's probably not going to be amazing the first couple weeks, but at least it's going to be exciting to watch someone different. You're going to feel like he has potential. And I think as a fan, you're going to feel like, well, at least he's got Brian Dable who's going to coach him up, right? And who's going to improve some of the things that maybe he needs improvement on. So I think that just having 2 new quarterbacks in the building, whether it's Rodgers or Wilson and a rookie alone, is enough for a fan to be like, all right, I can get on board, because at least in theory, I'm going to be watching better quarterback play, which we hope.
Impossible not to, right?
You would think.
At this point. I understand it. So I understand where Chris is coming from with, I don't want to be in purgatory either at all. The Cowboys have kind of been there for a while. Purgatory sucks. And I get that, but I also understand where Anthony's coming from, because I mentioned this in a previous stream as well. You can't, Washington is an exception to the rule. Not many teams go from worst to first or worst to the NFC Championship. It's rare. You have to take baby steps because the roster is 53 people. There's a salary cap. You can't just turn over a roster. You can't just buy a championship. You can't just go out and spend billions of dollars like the Dodgers do. You can't do that stuff in the NFL. So it takes time to build a roster. You're not just going to turn it all over. I equate it to like losing weight. You can't lose 80 pounds in a month. It's not healthy to do it that way, and you're going to gain it all back. We saw they tried to fix it all at one point. Dave Gettleman tried to fix it all his last year and completely destroyed the team. They fell off the wagon, and they won 3 games last year. So I would just like to see improvements. I'd like to be able to compete. Yeah, we're not going to be competitive, like Adriana said. Competing, but no, I'm sorry. Competitive, but not contending, right? Because that's what you want to see. You want to see them play tough against the division rivals. You want to see them play tough against the Lions. It'd be great if we could win those games, but just show that you're on their level. And it's not just a bye week or a speed bump or a scrimmage for these teams. Show a little New York Giant pride. So obviously, if they got a guy like Russell Wilson, I think it makes the offense much more competent. He can play in the NFL at any level. I don't think the Giants roster is as bad as the record, although Parcells always said you are what your record says you are. I really do feel like if we had some quarterbacks that can make some freaking plays, we won more games without question. We might not have won 11 games, but 7 certainly better than 3. As a Giants fan, yeah, I want to win 11, 12, 13 games. I want to be competitive. But at this point, I'm just so sick of watching this team. Every week I turn the TV on, I'm like, what am I watching for? I already know the outcome. We're going to get our asses beat, and I'm sick and tired of it. So I think it would be good to get that type of scenario where you have a Russell Wilson and a Shedeur Sanders or a Cameron Ward. And I think Giants fans should be able to get on board with such a scenario. We'll see if it happens. So
that will excite me if you have that combination, because as we've talked about with Rodgers or Wilson, it trickles down to everybody else on the offense too. It's going to improve the offensive line. It's going to improve the young receivers. And most importantly, it's going to be a guy that the young quarterback could soak in knowledge. So that's the scenario I'm excited. What I was saying, well, I'm not excited if you don't draft the core. If you take Travis Hunter, if you take Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, which I'm not against at all. But if you're asking me, am I going to be excited if Aaron Rodgers is 41 years old and he's the quarterback without an heir apparent? No, I'm not going to be excited.
Agreed. So with that said, we're going to get to these questions here. But the stream being brought to you by our friends at BetUS TV. You can check them out. That is their media empire on YouTube, BetUS TV. Now, you can see that who's the Giants' next quarterback? Is it Russell Wilson? Is it Jameis Winston? Is it Aaron Rodgers? I mean, who knows? So you would think that I would talk about the odds of the quarterbacks, right? Who's going to be the Giants' starting quarterback in 2025? However, I found better odds that I wanted to discuss with you guys and gal because I thought it was funny. So the Super Bowl odds have come out for I got to log back in. The Super Bowl odds have come out for 2026 already. And I thought there was some interesting I thought the odds are kind of interesting. So some of them, the Chiefs are 7-1. The Eagles are 6.5-1. They are the favorite to win the Super Bowl in 2025. Baltimore is 7-1, which they're the second betting favorite along with the Chiefs. The Bills are 7.5-1. So I thought the Ravens were a little interesting. Do you know what the Giants are? Any guess?
I don't know what the bottom odds would be, but I would guess third from the bottom. Like maybe like 180 to 1, 100 to 1. I don't know.
I was going to say 100 to 1.
Yeah.
Anthony, any guess?
I have no idea, to be honest.
The Giants are 32nd. They are the last team, the longest odds to make the Super Bowl at this point. Now, granted, that will change if they do get Russell Wilson. I think right now, if you look at the bet, it's because Tommy DeVito is their quarterback. Okay,
Right.
I wouldn't do it. They're 200 to 1.
Oh my God.
To win the Super Bowl. And again, those will obviously fluctuate and those will change as we go along and actually have a quarterback, whether it's Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, those will change. But I thought seeing the Giants at the very bottom of that list was kind of funny. I've never seen them there. Normally they are like third from the bottom, like you mentioned, but I found that very interesting. So they're 200-1.
I'm just curious. What's the Commanders?
The Commanders are 18-1. They're tied with the Bengals at 18-1. Also, the Niners at 16-1 seemed a little bit like.
What about the Chargers? What about Borna's team?
Borna's team, the Chargers are 25-1 with the Rams.
They're my Super Bowl sleeper this year. I'm also the biggest Harbaugh fan in the world, but they're my Super Bowl sleeper this year.
There you go. So again, big shout out to BetUS TV. You can check them out on YouTube. They sponsor our stream. Very appreciative of that. Let's get to some of these questions really quick. Hold on one second. Let me get rid of that right there. Denzio, thank you. He says, hello, guys. Do you think Shane is purposely delaying the quarterback decision in the free agency market to actually manipulate the draft, keep everyone guessing in his draft? Do you think that's the case at all, Chris? Do you just think that the Giants haven't been able to come to agreement and these quarterbacks are kind of holding on to the Giants? You think the quarterbacks are playing Joe Shane? Do you think Joe Shane's playing the quarterbacks?
Yeah, I think it's. I don't think Joe Shane's delaying it. I think Russell will. Ultimately, Aaron Rodgers is holding this all up, but I think it's also holding up Russell Wilson's decision for the reason that I said. Everybody on Twitter is flipping out. They're saying, just give Russell Wilson a contract. He's going to be willing to come here. I don't think it's as simple as that. I think Russell Wilson's sitting on the sideline and saying, I got all the time in the world. Giants need a quarterback. Cleveland needs a quarterback. I want to see if Pittsburgh's an option. And he's not going to know if Pittsburgh's an option until Aaron Rodgers makes his decision. So I don't think it's Joe Shane. I think Joe Shane would prefer to have his team set going into the draft so he knows what he needs. And if anything, we've talked about before in the show, I think acquiring an Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson enhances his power in the draft, because if you have Aaron Rodgers, suddenly you don't look as desperate to need to draft a quarterback at 3 overall. So I don't think that has anything to do with Joe Shane trying to delay this. I think it has everything to do with the fact that Aaron Rodgers is still in his cave and he can't make up his mind.
Or John, what do you think? You think that it's the quarterbacks holding up Joe Shane? You think Joe Shane is not willing to? Joe Shane's just not acting that desperate. He's just going to throw a boatload of money at one of these guys. Although he did offer Stafford like $100 million guaranteed. So what do you think the situation is here?
Yeah, which is why I think it's not. I agree with Anthony that I don't think it's about the money for Rodgers, because I think the Giants probably offered him a pretty hefty price tag. I think that, I hate to say this, but I think that the Giants are desperate to win games this year, and they think that Aaron Rodgers is the best free agent quarterback, and they just are willing to go along with the ride because the draft is still over a month away. They probably figure, oh, we have time, maybe we're making our calls, fishing around, seeing what it would take to move up, if anyone wants to trade with us, that kind of thing, that he's maybe like acting like they're not in a rush, which I guess maybe they don't have to be, but I think that it's more so they need to win games, and they think Aaron Rodgers is the best possibility for them to win games this year. So they don't want to pressure him. They're just going to let him come to his decision on his own. So, they can say, well, we did everything. We tried to get Matt Stafford. We tried to get Aaron Rodgers, so John Mara, if we ended up with Joe Flacco, he was the last of our choices, but he was the only one available, and we can only do so much with him, if we can't trade up to 1 to get Cam Ward.
Yeah, it's crazy, the situation. Anthony, what do you think? You think it's Joe Shane that's holding out here, or you think the quarterbacks are holding out on Joe Shane?
I think it's the quarterbacks. I think, again, we're just all waiting on Aaron Rodgers to make his decision. And I guess from certain perspectives, maybe there is no reason to rush it. I think obviously fans are eager to get the quarterback in here. I think there is a lot of benefits to having the quarterback signed and under contract well in advance of the NFL draft. But if they're going to wait for Rodgers and hold out hope for him, I guess so be it. The question mark that I have, though, is, and this is what I keep coming back to, Rodgers is 41. And yeah, he had the 28-11 TDI-INT ratio and the 3,800 yards, like I mentioned. And that's great. Like, he had a pretty fine statistical season. If you take Russell Wilson's 11 games and you extrapolate that average across 17 games, it's relatively similar to Aaron Rodgers. Plus, he's 5 years younger. So, and he hasn't had a season-ending injury recently. So I actually just don't really understand why the Giants are waiting for Rodgers and why Rodgers is considered the top prize here in free agency. Because at maximum, if you sign Rodgers, you get 1 or 2 seasons out of him. If Russell Wilson signs with you and takes you to the playoffs and is a good quarterback, he's still only 37 years old by the end of the season. He technically could still have an extra 4 years left in the tank. Now, obviously, he didn't play his best ball last year, and he obviously has been regressing for the past several seasons. But I actually think there was a progression last year in Pittsburgh compared to the season prior in Denver. So maybe he is back on the upswing. Who knows? Sometimes quarterbacks do have swings in their career. So I kind of just wanted to ask the panel that. Do you all feel like Rodgers is the top quarterback in this free agency market? Because for me personally, based on age, recency, and how well they've played the past season or two, I actually think Russell Wilson, look at all the advanced stats and metrics too. I mean, PFF grades are subjective, sure. But if you look at completion percentage, beyond the line of scrimmage, 20 plus yards downfield, all of these things, Russell Wilson is higher graded in almost every metric. So I actually just don't understand where it comes from, this narrative that Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback in the free agency market.
Do you think it's just because his name's Aaron Rodgers? Because I agree with you. I do. Russell Wilson myself. I prefer Russell Wilson. I don't think there's any drop off anywhere. And like you mentioned, he's 4 years younger. So for me, I think Russell Wilson is the best fit for the Giants. I'm just wondering if it's because his name is Aaron Rodgers. The Giants really covered him for his name more so than anything else. My worry is, like we mentioned right at the top of the show, the Giants sit there and wait for Aaron Rodgers to make a decision. They lose out on Russell Wilson. They lose out on Jameis Winston. They lose out on these quarterbacks. And then Aaron Rodgers says, screw you guys. I'm going to Pittsburgh. Then what the hell do you do? Then it is Carson Wentz season. And no Giants fan wants to go into 2025 with Carson Wentz as QB1. So I agree, Anthony. I think Russell Wilson is the best option. I would consider him the best free agent quarterback out there. Adriana's going to agree because she hates Aaron Rodgers. But Chris, I know you are an Aaron Rodgers guy. So what do you think about that?
I'm not an Aaron Rodgers guy at 41, but to go back to Anthony's, I think he said, I don't know why the Giants. I honestly think that, as I said earlier, I think the Giants would sign Wilson right now if they could. I honestly think Wilson's the one holding out because he wants to see if the Pittsburgh job's an opening, and he's waiting on Rodgers. That's my opinion. If you ask me who I think's if I had to pick one for 1 year, I still think Rodgers is the better quarterback of the two, but it's not high enough to the point where I really care because the Giants aren't in a Super Bowl window. And when you factor in the fact that Wilson would probably be a better locker room guy, he's kind of embraced that mentor role, right? He took the job with Justin Fields, knowing that he was signing on to be his mentor there. I would guess he'd probably be a better locker room guy for the Giants. What is Rodgers going to give you? Maybe an extra win? Who cares? At the end of the day, I think the primary purpose why I'm drawn to either one of these quarterbacks is I think it buys the rookie time before you have to throw him into the fire, and it gives him a valuable we're talking about a legend, a guy to learn under for his first year in the pros. So I think both of those guys would serve that purpose, and I don't think Rodgers is better enough to the point, and the Giants aren't in a position where even if he was significantly better than Russell Wilson, where it would make that much of a difference. We're not competing to win a Super Bowl next year with either one of these two quarterbacks. So I'm at the point where I really don't care which one they get. I just want them to get one of them. And I think Russell Wilson is the more likely outcome of the two.
Adriana, why do you think the Giants covet Aaron Rodgers so much to the point there's pretty much seems like they're just waiting for him to make a decision instead of the Giants making their own damn decision and saying, screw you, not playing games. And we need a quarterback. You don't want to be here. To hell with you. We're going to go a different route.
I think it's the same thing that I've heard from fans too. Well, he's a 4-time MVP. He's Aaron Rodgers. Like the amount of times that people have said that, I'm like, I understand that. The last time he won an MVP was 4 years ago. More recently, he tore his Achilles and has not played that well since then. So I get the MVP thing, but I think that's just a big part of it is he's Aaron Rodgers. He's won 4 MVPs. I think there's also this narrative too that he wants to stick it to the Jets, and he can do that by coming to the Giants and having a good season here. So I think that is probably a narrative among the fans and the media, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is some truth to it. And I think that, I don't know how the Giants and how the front office feels about, the whole Jets thing, but it also wouldn't surprise me if they probably have in the back of their minds, like, well, if Aaron Rodgers comes here and does well, we can prove that we're the owners of MetLife Stadium, not them.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers thing is absolutely ridiculous. I'm sick of the Aaron Rodgers crap myself.
If I would have told you like week 8 of last season that Aaron Rodgers would be the most talked about person on a Giant show for a month straight, You would have called me an idiot.
Yeah. So what are you talking about? What are you on?
That this is where we are. But
by the way, big shout out to over 300 people in the chat. Appreciate you. We went over 3,100 subscribers, which greatly appreciate. So if you haven't done it, do us a favor, subscribe to the channel. It's free. Hit the thumbs up. That always helps out the stream. But thank you for continuing to make the channel grow in the off season when we really haven't had a ton to talk about. As I said before, this channel is just going to grow exponentially as we do get into the season. It's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you for 3,100 subscribers. Let's keep it up. Let's keep growing. Jonathan, think of the question, why do you think they've done nothing to improve the offense? Guard, possibly adding a vet receiver. It's pretty sad, especially how bad this offense has been. And a rookie coming in. Well, let me just start by saying this. They did add a veteran receiver. He was just already here. It was Darius Slayton, and they brought back Van Roten. That doesn't mean they're done with guard, but they definitely wanted to fix that secondary. That was very important. And the free agency market offensively wasn't really great either. So I think their hands are kind of tied. Once Godwin was gone and Metcalf was gone and Devontae Adams was gone, they got big money. That was pretty much it. There wasn't much there left. So I don't know if anybody wants to add anything to that.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, from what I've heard, it sounds like the Giants were pretty in on Will Freeze. That was going to be one of their big signings. And when that didn't work out, that's when they pivoted to Javon Holland. So I'm curious as to why they haven't gone for a Brandon Scherf or a Dalton Reisner or someone like that instead of going back to Van Roten. But I did think that was very interesting. And it made me think, like, I wonder if they went after Godwin or some of the other free agent wide receivers. Like, I don't even think they got close to T. Higgins, but it did make me think, like, I wonder if there were other instances like that.
I thought Josh Palmer. I thought they were in on Josh Palmer. I just don't know if they ever offered him any money or not.
Yeah. My guess is too that that's just going to be their focus in the draft, right? I mean, I guess that's the good thing now is we can assume that they still have, multiple picks left in the draft that they could use on offense to help build depth like they did on the defense.
Definitely. Anything to add there about the offense, why they didn't add any offensive players?
Yeah, I mean, I think Anthony, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, because I think it's because they feel like they're a quarterback away and they think a quarterback will elevate a lot of these. Like a lot of problems they had last year probably were masked by a quarterback playing better. So I think that's really what it boils down to for them.
True.
Yeah. Good point. And I think, like you said, Bad Dog, the wide receiver market wasn't there. Like, I think if T. Higgins was an option, the Giants would have pursued him. I really believe that. I just don't think he was ever going to view the Giants as a desirable location. Like, Cincinnati's a much better spot for him.
Right.
Godwin,
you mean we don't have Joe? You don't have a Joe Burrow over here to throw him the football here?
Godwin, same thing. He clearly he felt comfortable in Tampa Bay, where he's played his whole career. He quickly signed back there. So, and I think he took significantly less money, if I'm not mistaken, if I recall, to stay there. So the Giants aren't really a destination where people are looking and dying to come to. So at the end of the day, as far as the wide receiver market goes, at least there wasn't many options for the Giants other than to bring back Darius Slayton. The offensive line, I think Shane, at least, explored some guys that could make a significant impact, but at the end of the day, he couldn't get them. So he said, okay, let's bring it back with the same group of guys, another year to continue to build with one another, which I'm not necessarily against. I like that idea. I think that, as I've said before, I think it takes time for an offensive line to gel. And if you're constantly shifting offensive linemen in and out of the starting lineup year over year, you're not going to be able to grow. So I don't hate that idea. And he did, and it looks like he tried to build some depth on that line. And I expect him to continue to do that in this year's draft. He's got 5 picks inside the top 105. I'd be surprised if at least one of those aren't an interior offensive lineman and potentially one wide receiver for the future. So that's where I'm at. So I'm not really surprised because I don't think there were a whole lot of options for them to really have a super impactful player on the offensive end, which is why he kind of went more towards the defensive end because he felt like he get some impactful players there in free agency.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, not that it probably ain't going to make a difference at the end of the day, but they're also, we talked about this a while back, they're going to try Evan Neal at guard. Maybe you catch lightning in a bottle. Maybe he ends up being a really good guard. I mean, he was a really shitty tackle, but if you get any value out of him at the guard position, at least the draft pick doesn't look as bad. Eric, thank you so much for the donation. He is on board with Jameis Winston. I'd have no problem if they brought in Jameis Winston, honestly. I prefer Russell Wilson, but I mean, Jameis Winston can play at this level. He's a good mentor. He's a good bridge quarterback. He's not going to cost as much as the other quarterbacks. I'm perfectly fine with Jameis Winston being a Giant next year. As a matter of fact, Chris and I, when we talk about it, that was always our pick. We thought for sure that he was going to be the guy. Never really considered Rodgers or Russell Wilson when we were doing games back in December and January. So,
Yeah.
But I have no problem with Jameis Winston.
I think he's perfect if you're drafting a quarterback. I mean, I think Russell Wilson's better, but I'm completely fine with Jameis Winston. He's a guy that could play for 6-7 weeks, and he's a guy that is experienced being drafted number 1 overall, so he knows the pressures that come with that. For a guy like a Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, if we went that route, and he would at least make things exciting, right? He could he definitely will throw the ball all over the field. He'll make a lot of mistakes, but he'll also give his receivers a lot of opportunities. So, I'm completely on board with Jameis Winston if that's the route that they elect to go. He's not as good as the guys we've talked about with Wilson and Rodgers, but like I said, I don't put too much stock into that because we're not going to do a ton of damage with Russell Wilson as our quarterback next year anyway. The thing that I'm most drawn to with these guys is, can they help the rookie quarterback grow? And I think Jameis Winston can accomplish that as well.
I also find Jameis Winston's ironic because I kind of compared Cameron Ward to Jameis Winston. He's a high risk, high reward type of quarterback. He's gonna make some interceptions. He's gonna throw some passes. Like, what the hell are you doing? He's gonna make some plays. Where you're like, wow. And I can be fine with that. I can get on board the guy that throws 36 touchdowns and 18 interceptions. We had a quarterback here that threw a lot of interceptions. Won 2 Super Bowls. So we know all about it. I'd rather have that guy that takes those chances and throws an interception 50 yards down the field as opposed to the guy that throws a 3-yard stick pattern 2 seconds late behind the receiver and ends up being a pick six, right? That's the way I look at it. So I'd be cool with Jameis Winston. I have no problem with that at all.
I'll also say for Jameis Winston, at least we know Malik Neighbors would get the ball a ton. Like he feeds his number 1 receiver. Mike Evans got the ball a ridiculous amount when, Jameis Winston was with the Bucs. So I think that he would be exciting to watch. And I agree with you, Bad Dog. Like I miss having a Giants quarterback that's not afraid of throwing interceptions, that's willing to fire it into coverage and give the wide receiver a chance. We haven't seen that over the last 6 years because Daniel Jones would just hold on to the ball and take sacks instead of throwing the ball downfield. At least I know Jameis is going to put it up there and give Neighbors a chance to make a play. And that's all Neighbors needs to actually make the play is just a chance. So I think he would be really exciting to watch for the Giants. Of course, it would probably only last about 10 weeks before a rookie stepped into the lineup, but that's fine by me. Start of a new era. And I think that's just as exciting.
Yep. I definitely get on board with that. John, thank you so much. He says Rodgers had weapons on the Jets and couldn't do it. What makes you think he'll make a difference on the Giants? Just sign Winston or Russ, trade up for Ward, or trade down and get Sanders or Dart. Well, the Giants aren't going to trade down, John. I can tell you that. There's no way, no how. Joe Shane's job is on the line. He's not kicking the can down. There's no way. He is going to go down with the ship. If he's going to get fired, he is taking his guy at 3. That's just the way I look at it. And the Giants do have weapons. I mean, Malik Neighbors is an absolute weapon. I would say Malik Neighbors is better than Devontae Adams. I don't know if you want to say he's better than Garrett Wilson, but I think he is.
I think he is.
I think Wan'Dale Robinson and Theo Johnson and Darius Slayton, I think it's a pretty good combination. I think the Giants have weapons. And to Anthony's point that he mentioned earlier, we don't have a quarterback that can get the ball in the hands of our weapons. A guy like Rodgers could. Adriana, I know you're a big Rodgers fan, so we always give the floor to you when they talk about Rodgers. So what do you think about that?
Well, I kind of thought the same thing from Rodgers' perspective. I'm like, if you're comparing the Giants with the Steelers, what on earth are you thinking being like, oh, the Giants is the right move for me? And I also felt the same way when Rodgers went to the Jets. I'm like, they have a ton of weapons. I mean, I thought the issue was the coaching, but I'm like, if he can't succeed with the Jets, good luck here. We have a worse coaching staff, I think, and at the time a worse roster. So I think the difference is that the expectation from fans and maybe the front office is that Rodgers isn't coming in here to win us a Super Bowl. I think with the Jets, it was like Super Bowl or bust. That's why we're paying Aaron Rodgers all this money. That's why, we got this whole roster set up. I think that was the plan and that was the goal for them. And the Giants are obviously nowhere near close to that. I think the expectation, if he came to the Giants, it's win us some football games, win us, 7 or 8 games, and we'll see how things go from there. So I think that's part of it. I do think that Dable is a better coach than Saleh. I do ultimately think, though, that they're probably just both better off as coordinators. So, I'm not dying for Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he's going to come in here and win us 10 games, whereas Winston or Russ are only going to win us 7. Like, I think across the board, whether it's any of them, we're probably not winning more than 8 games, like at the most. So yeah. I think he's the most annoying of the 3 and would also prefer someone else, mostly because of that.
The reason I would say I think he makes a difference is because did you look at our quarterback room last year? He'd make a big difference over that quarterback room. Anthony, what do you think?
Listen, I want to say about the annoying part. I'm annoyed that we're still talking about Aaron Rodgers a week into the offseason. This whole thing, it just bugs me. And it turned me off. Yeah, I originally was like, no, I don't want Aaron Rodgers, no interest. And then I gained a little bit of interest. That interest has faded away pretty quickly. If they end up signing him, all right, cool. I guess I'll be interested again. But right now, I'm just so over it with Aaron Rodgers. I want to move on from this whole thing and start talking about who the Giants quarterback is or is going to be in the draft or Russell Wilson something. This whole media circus is exactly what we were concerned about, and it's exactly what we see unfolding, and he's not even on the New York Giants. So I think it's ridiculous. But, if the idea is to trade down, I agree with you, Bad Dog. I don't think that's a possibility for the Giants. I don't think that they're in a position to trade down and accumulate picks. I think they're going to want to go ahead and stick and pick because, similar to the Titans, if they're not getting the quarterback of the future, they're going to want to go ahead and get that generational prospect. And if they can pair a generational prospect with a Rodgers, at least Joe Shane can sell it to management that he won the offseason in a specific way by landing a top prospect and upgrading that quarterback.
No.
What kind of dog do you have, John?
Oh my God, I thought I was muted. Sorry.
What kind of dog is it?
An English bulldog. And I'm at my parents' house with her because we're going to Vegas tomorrow. And she just wants to play. And
she doesn't like right now. She's sick of the Aaron Rodgers shit too. I mean, it's obvious.
Very sick of it.
Chris, what do you think? What do you think about
it? Again, like we've all said, I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to make – maybe he's a win or two better than the other 2 options, but in the grand scheme of things, what really does it matter? The one thing I will say about Aaron Rodgers, I actually think he could be better with the Giants than he was with the Jets. I think the weapons are comparable. I think they're comparable, but I think the biggest thing that we haven't talked about today, I think it's very fair to think that Aaron Rodgers could be significantly better next year for the simple reason he's year 2 removed from that serious injury. A lot of the times it takes an extra year to get back to full strength from an injury like that. I know he's 41, but if Rodgers appeared as if he was getting better as the year progressed last year, if he could stay healthy, I don't think it's far-fetched to think he could be a better quarterback for the New York Giants than he was for the New York Jets. But at the end of the day, he's not bringing us a Super Bowl like we've said throughout the show.
Agreed. Jermaine Mo Brown, thank you, my friend. He says, I agree. I think we're all in consensus with this. This is the consensus. I'm tired of the Rodgers clown show. I believe Russell's a better mentor for a new quarterback. I also have a feeling that Milroe will be a sleeper. Anthony, I know you like Milroe. Is it so? We've seen this happen before. I'm just curious. I don't know where Milroe is going to go in the draft. No clue. Is it possible the Giants took 2 quarterbacks in this year's draft class? Say Milroe fell to the end of the 3rd round. Is it possible the Giants take Shore Sanders at 3 and a guy like Milroe late in the 3rd round? I don't know if he's going to get there, but hypothetically speaking, could that actually happen?
I think it could happen. I think they could take 2 quarterbacks in this draft class. I don't think they would take 2 inside the top 100. I think that is, with those top 100 picks, based on the way that Joe Shane has drafted and based on the needs on the roster, I think he's going to try and plug in some needs there. I love your dog. Your dog is amazing, and I want your dog. But Jalen Milroe in the top 100 makes sense for a team that has more of a long-term vision at the quarterback position. And I get that wanting to add competition in there and take multiple shots at the quarterback position. Obviously, I'm all on board with that. I'm the guy who always says you have to throw darts at the board. But in the top 100 twice probably doesn't make sense. If you're going to take, let's say, Shedeur at 3, maybe when you get to round 6, let's say a lot of people expected Will Howard to go in the 4th, but somehow he's fallen to the 6th. That makes sense because now you're throwing another dart at the board. And, that's kind of similar to like Brock Purdy with the final pick in the draft. While some teams thought that he would have gone in the 6th round, he looked like he was going to go undrafted. That's why the 49ers took him there, because he was good value and best player available mindset. So I think that's more realistic for the Giants. Obviously, we have seen a team do 2 in the top 100 before, that being Washington when they took Robert Griffin III and Kirk Cousins in the same draft class. Kirk was a 3rd-round draft pick. That was shocking in and of itself. I don't think the Giants are situated to do that, though, just because of how many top 100 picks they have and also how many needs they have on the roster. Yeah, that's kind of my take on it. If it's later in the draft, it makes sense. But actually, for Jalen Milroe, since I didn't really even talk about him, I think that Milroe is a sleeper. I don't know if he's a lock for the top 100 because him running that blazing fast 40-yard dash today, what does that change? We all knew he was capable of that.
Yeah.
Like just because he did what we expected him to do, great. You did exactly what we expected you to do. You still have to figure out how to play the quarterback position, and you still cannot change the fact that your hands are under the requisite size for most NFL quarterbacks, and that matters to a lot of NFL teams. So I don't even know if he's a top to go in the top 100 or a lock to go in the top 100. And if the Giants maybe view him as a top 100 pick and he slides out of the top 100 because of that speed and that ability that you just can't teach that he has, then yeah, he is going to end up being a sleeper that I could see the Giants taking a double dipping at the quarterback position on if he does slide out of that top 100 projection that he currently has.
Chris, are you sick of the Rodgers clown show yet?
Am I sick of the Rodgers clown show? Yeah, 100%. I'm sick of the Rodgers clown show. And to the question you just asked, Anthony, could I foresee a scenario where the Giants take 2 quarterbacks inside the top 105 picks? Obviously, they have 5 inside the top 105. Yes, but it would only be if they didn't end up getting an Aaron Rodgers or a Russell Wilson. If you add one of those two, the answer for me is no. But could I foresee, with all these extra picks they have in this draft, yeah, it's possible. Do I think it'll happen? Probably not. I think if they take a quarterback at 3 overall, they probably try to build out the rest of their roster and support Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward as best as they possibly can from the jump. But it's possible. We saw New England do it last year, right? They took Drake May and they took Milton. Obviously, Washington, very famous for doing that, taking Kirk Cousins and RG3. So it happens. And, they would have to really like one of these guys enough to say, well, he's a guy we could work with. Maybe it is a guy like a Milroe at pick 105 if he falls there and they say, yeah, he's a guy that we could work with and he's a good option if Shedeur Sanders doesn't work out, or maybe he's a trade option in the future if he could develop. So I won't completely rule it out. But if they were to sign Russell Wilson, I would think I would almost completely rule it out.
Audrey, are you sick of Aaron Rodgers yet?
Is anyone not sick of Aaron Rodgers? Like, I just don't understand how everyone in the building is just like not bothered by it. I would love to see them do that with the quarterback situation. As Joe Shane has said, he likes to just take swings on everyone, every position. So would love to see him do it with the quarterback, but I don't think they will do that because they have done nothing that has proven to me that they would do that. Last year, they could have gotten Joe Milton. They could have gotten Spencer Rattler. They could have gotten a quarterback in later rounds when they had the draft picks, and they didn't. So while I would love for them to do that this year, I don't think that they will. I think if they make it to 2026, would love for them to get another quarterback next year. So that would be my hope.
Yeah, I don't know what Joe Shane, he's like I said, Anthony mentioned that he's had a pattern, and he might have to change it because the pattern hasn't been very good. So who knows? Maybe he thinks outside the box. But maybe it's not Milroe inside the top 105, but it would not surprise me if the Giants did take 2 quarterbacks in this year's draft class. Even if they do sign a Russell Wilson, I can see them bringing in some competition. And Tommy DeVito only signed a 1-year deal, so it's very easily that they could say, all right, well, we're going to let you go. We're going to check out this rookie, whether it's Shuck or Howard or whoever you want to say in maybe the 5th or 6th round. Giants realist thing, he says Ward goes 1, Sanders goes 2, Hunter or Carter 3. Probably unpopular opinion, but go Hunter. We have our own Chase and Higgins on rookie for your deals. The way I look at this, you take Abdul Carter. I don't think it's any question. Travis Hunter is more of a corner than a wide receiver. And I love Abdul Carter. I don't know what to say. There's no doc on Travis Hunter. I absolutely love Abdul Carter. The guy is just sick. Can't have enough edge rushers, in my opinion. Anybody want to add anything onto that?
I'd be happy with either one. I think both of them are great prospects, and they're going to be great pros, and they play some of the most important positions. And if they took Travis Hunter, I'm going to celebrate on draft night. I think he's going to be a really good pro. But I'm with you. If I have to pick between the two, I'd pick Abdul Carter. I think it's a more important position, and I don't devalue corner or wide receiver. I think they're both very important positions, but I think edge is a bit more important. And I think if you have a dominant edge, and when I say dominant, I'm not talking about a Kayvon Thibodeau. I'm talking about a guy like a Micah Parsons. It could transform a defense. A guy like a Bosa, an Aiden Hutchinson. That could transform a defense overnight. And you look at the price tag these guys are getting. Myles Garrett just got $40 million a year. If you can get a dominant edge rusher on a rookie cost-effective salary for 5 years, that's incredibly valuable. And I think he will be a top 5 edge in the NFL. That's how good I think he is. So if I had to make a pick, I'd pick Abdul Carter. But I can't fight with anybody that would take Hunter.
I can't either.
Yeah, he's a diamond in the rough. I mean, the guy has the ability. He's arguably the best wide receiver and the best cornerback in this year's draft. So, I'd be happy with either one. But if I had to pick one, I would go with Carter.
Yeah, I agree.
I think I'd lean Travis Hunter, but I just really like Travis Hunter, man. Like, I know, honestly, everything you just put out there, Chris, logically sounds, yes, take the edge rusher, makes more sense. But I don't know. I love Travis Hunter, man. He's so much fun to watch. And I think that he is a generational special talent. And so if that's where the Giants go, either one of those guys, like you said, I'm happy with both.
Yeah, I'm not going to be upset.
Either one. Right. I'm happy. But I don't know. He's the Heisman Trophy winner. He's fun to watch. And, if he fails in one position, he'll succeed at the other, I think. But I really, truly believe he can do the playing both sides of the football field thing. And I think he can do both at a high level.
I'm thinking about this as we're talking about him playing on both sides. We saw what happened in baseball with a unique player with Ohtani, a pitcher and a hitter. What do you get, like $70 million a year because he basically plays 2 different positions? If Travis Hunter was able to do what he was able to do in college, and I don't think he will be able to do that. But if he was able to do that, basically play full-time on both sides of the ball, and he was a near Pro Bowl player on both sides of the ball, what do you think his market would be? Like, I don't even know. Because you're
by the time you're talking 5 years down the road. So God,
I'm just curious. Yeah.
Well,
$70 million a year.
I was going to say it's got to be like 50 plus. If you think about what the wide receivers are getting plus what the cornerbacks are getting.
Yeah, and they had 5 years down the road from now with that.
Right.
I don't think teams are going to let him do it because of that reason. Exactly. I think, I think it was the Browns came out and said, well, we view him as a wide receiver. And then I think it was the Titans that came out and said, oh, we view him as a cornerback. I think those teams at first people were like, well, why are they already deciding that? They haven't even drafted him potentially. Why would they decide that now? I think they're trying to plant a flag and say, we're not going to let you do it because we're not going to pay you to do both. So I think that's ultimately what it's coming down to is finances for NFL teams.
I agree
plus
with you. I don't think it will
risk
happen.
along with it. So I think it should happen, though. They should let him play, man. They should let him do what he does because that's what makes him special. And I truly believe how talented he is. I've never seen a guy move the way that he moves on both sides of the ball like that. Like, it's absurd. He's an absolute unicorn. So let him do it, man. History is meant to be reset. And if he's going to make history in the NFL, I don't see why a team should stand in the way of that happening.
Hey, if you're picking top 3, you might as well get the most value out of the draft pick. And if he can be effective on both sides of the ball, let him do it. OG Robbie T, thank you. Can you all talk Sanders versus Ward? We have discussed that a lot on this channel for God knows how long. So I don't know. We don't really have a ton of time left to discuss it.
I think most fans want Ward.
Sanders is more polished. Ward is more
I think
dynamic.
Most fans want Ward, but I think most fans should realize it's more likely we're going to end up with Sanders.
I'll take either one of them.
Yeah, I'm at that point too. I don't care who it is. I'm happy with both of them. I do have a preference for Ward, but I do like the fact that Sanders is a little more NFL ready. So if we do have to see him in week 6 or so, I probably feel a little more confident that Sanders is going to be more poised and ready to go out there than Ward would be.
Yeah. David, thank you. He says draft Carter, Hunter at 3. Hopefully Abdul Carter. Draft Dart. Pick up Winston or Wilson. The team can definitely win some games and be competitive. We talked about that. I don't know if it was the last show or the show before where would you be okay with the Giants signing a veteran quarterback, taking the best player at 3, which is not a quarterback at this point. It would be Hunter or Abdul Carter. They're definitely the consensus best picks in this draft. So if one of them got to 3 and the Giants felt like they could get Dart. The problem is if you plan on that, you're taking a chance that he doesn't go. Like I didn't see Bo Nix going 12th last year. I can tell you that. You'd have to hope that he doesn't go 12th. What's that?
Michael Penix went 6th or whatever. No, 8th.
Yeah.
Nope, nobody saw that coming either. You don't know where these guys are going to
So
go.
that's the thing. You if you're Joe Shane, it's tough to say. We'll take. I'd be fine with Carter or Travis Hunter, but if you're Joe Shane, and Chris does this a lot, and you look at it from his perspective, it's difficult for him to say, my job's on the line. I'm going to take a chance and pass on a quarterback here and hope that Dart's available when it comes back around to me. And then if he's not there, then what do you do? Then what are you stuck with? You're going to go into the year with Jameis Winston and Tommy DeVito as your 2 quarterbacks. It's not good for Joe Shane. So it'd be a big gamble. If he was in a different situation, like Chris has mentioned in previous streams, like the Titans GM, who's brand new, and you can sell the team on we're rebuilding this way, you get away with it. Joe Shane's not in the luxurious position to make that call anymore. I think he's got to go quarterback at 3 if Sanders or
if one of them are there. Yeah, and I wouldn't be, as I've said several times, I would be happy with this scenario. I wouldn't be excited about it without having a quarterback of the future on the roster, but I would be happy with this scenario because I think Abdul Carter is the best player in this draft. If you end up with Abdul Carter, I would say, okay, Joe Shane's going to be fired at the end of the year, but
right.
At least we have a dominant edge rusher for the future to pair with Burns, who's still relatively young, potentially Kayvon. We've got pieces on the offense with, of course, Dexter, but pieces on the offense with Malik Neighbors and whatever we do throughout the rest of the draft, and we'll get our quarterback next year. I'd be fine with that. But like you said, Bad Dog, I think when we all try to think about this, you also have to incorporate how you think the GM's going to think. And because of all the factors we've talked about for weeks, if one of those 2 guys are there, I almost see no scenario where he doesn't take one. At the end of the day, his job is to sell hope. And you have to be able to sell the fan base and Mara on some hope for the future. And that's the quarterback position. And you don't know when you're going to be picking that early again. And you don't know if you're Shane, if you're ever going to get another opportunity to draft a quarterback. This could be your last year. So that's just where I'm at.
I do agree with that. And obviously, my stance is clear. You throw darts at the board. When you're picking a position to take a quarterback, you take one. However, a common counterpoint that I get faced with is, well, what if you don't like the quarterbacks there? What if you're not in love with them? And I think that is an important question to pose. What if Joe Shane doesn't like Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward is off the board? Then does this outcome here of drafting Carter or Hunter at 3 and then trying your best to get Dart later in the draft, would that not be sensible if you're in that school of thought? For me, I'm in the school of thought. You got a chance to get a potential franchise quarterback in Sanders, even if you're not necessarily head over heels for him, but you like him. I think you take him anyway because you need to take a shot at the quarterback position. So I would draft Sanders, and I do like Sanders and think he can be a franchise quarterback. But what if you're adamant he's not going to be a franchise quarterback? You really don't like him, and maybe that's exactly how Joe Shane feels. Then possibly you do go that route, best player available at 3, which again, I commend a GM who does go BPA anyway, so I can't really complain there. And then if you like Jackson Dart and think he's a sleeper, then it could make sense. So I could see both ways where it shakes out for Joe Shane. He does either one of these 2 scenarios, and we'll end up loving him or hating him for it either way. It'll just depend on the outcome, which will be decided in 2026 and beyond.
Adriana, what do you think? You think he could pass? Say Shedeur Sanders is there at 3. You think it's possible that he takes one of those guys to be there? It'd either be Hunter or Abdul Carter. You think he would pass on Shedeur Sanders, hope to get Jackson Dart in the second round and take the BPA at 3?
No chance. I don't think so. I think, well, also from what I understand, it seems like he does really like Shedeur Sanders. They spent a ton of time in Colorado scouting him, meeting with him, et cetera, et cetera. You know, he had Giants cleats, that whole thing. So I think that they do really like him. I think, you know, what Anthony was talking about, if they really didn't like him, then I could see them picking someone else. But I think because they're in the position that they're in, and it sounds like they do like him and think he could have a bright future here, that they would definitely do that. But if they go 1 and 2, then I'm happy with them taking best player available there. And then you worry about the quarterback later, and you either trade up for Dart or you figure you can go after Milroe or someone else that maybe they like too.
All right. So we are out of time. I just want to be wrong. I got this. All right. We're going to bookmark this for next stream, which is going to be Friday night. So again, if you guys are tuning in now and you want to ask some questions Friday night, unless there's some pressing, if the Giants do go out and sign a quarterback, obviously we will discuss that on Friday. It just doesn't look like we're going to have a quarterback by then. But Friday night's editions will be mailbag type of things. If you have a question you'd like to ask the panel, just leave it in the chat section of this video. And we'll take the 3 or 4 best questions and we will answer them for you on Friday. B-Rog, we'll start with you. I just want to let you know I see this because last time I was ending it and somebody sent a super chat and I didn't get to it. But just want to let you know we'll answer that first and we'll answer your questions on Friday.
That's how we get a guaranteed viewer next week. We're strategic.
That's right. We're gonna B-Rog will definitely be here on Friday. So again, we appreciate all you guys and girls tuning in as always, making the show grow very fast. And we're very happy to have such a great audience watching. It's going to be more and more fun as we get closer and closer to the draft and we get some freaking answers. So for Adriana, Anthony, and the entertainment, it's a bad diggy distance. Enjoy the rest of your hump day, everybody. We'll see you Friday and we out.